Hi, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be going over text fields in SwiftUI. Now these are built-in components that make displaying data or accepting data from users extremely easy. If you're ready to get started with text fields, then stay tuned. Let's learn together. Alright, so here we are in our brand new Xcode project. Now to get started with text fields, you will first need a state variable to keep track of the text that you want displayed. So for our first example, we will just make our text an empty string. And then in order to display a text field, you can display the text field, and we've got a few different initializers as you can see here. We will start with the most basic one, which is just a title and a text. Now this title is what would be displayed to the user if you were on something like a Mac OS. And if you're on iOS, this is what would be read out to the user through something like an accessibility label. So let's go ahead and let's just call this our user input for now, since we don't really know what this user input is going to be. And it takes, as you can see, a binding to a string. And so that binding is our text variable here with a state variable. So we will say that this is our state variable of text. And so we're passing the binding to it with this $sign. Great, and as you can see, we've already got this user input that we can just type into over here, and there we go. We've already got a basic text field on the screen. Very cool. So now, what if we wanted to allow this text field to change the axis? In other words, to change where it grows. So for example, right now, if we, selected the wrong section here. Let's select our input over here, and then we say that this is a really long piece of text. And then we can copy that here, and then we just will space, and then we'll paste it. And as you can see, that text is actually scrolling off the screen horizontally. So what would that look like if we wanted it to scroll vertically, similar to like an iMessage would do, an iMessage text field would do. So we could come back over here and let's just temporarily rewrite the text here. So we will say that this is a really long piece of text. And then we will just copy that and we'll paste it a couple times just to kind of get an idea of what that would look like in our view. And as you can see, it goes off the screen over here. So in order to fix that and make this scroll vertically, there was another text field initializer that we can use, and it takes an axis. Now this axis is horizontal by default, but you can select vertical here. And now as you can see, it's caused our text field to grow vertically, which is really nice whenever you want all the text to stay on the size of to stay within the bounds of the screen. Alright, and there is another initializer that we can use with our text field here, and we will get rid of our axis for now, and we will just say that this takes a prompt. Now a prompt is very similar to a placeholder. So in order to see this, let's go ahead and put this back to an empty string here. And if we come in here, our prompt takes a text component. So we could say something like enter your name. And as you can see, it gives us a placeholder looking text of enter your name to give the user an idea of what kind of values go into this field. Now you don't always have to pass in just a pure string like this. So for now, let's go ahead and again get rid of our prompt. We can also use a text field with a slightly different initializer. Instead of a text, it would take a value. And in this value, we can pass in something like 10, for example. And as you can see here, every time we pass in a value, we need to also pass in a formatter. So we will say that this is a format of .number, for example. Nice. Now you can see we are passing in, this gets translated into an integer. So we're able to pass in integers into our text field. If we were to try to pass in something like the letter A, for example, and then select off of our text field, then it changes that back. So if we type in the letter B and we get off of our text field, it puts it back to a number, which is very interesting. You get a little bit of validation there. So we could also do something more than just a pure solid number. We could say something like this and change our format to a currency, and we will just pass in USD for now. And as you can see, it changed that format to currency, which is pretty cool. We could also do something like this, and we could say that this is a date.now, and instead of a currency, we could make this a date time. And then you would see here that we are displaying a date time in our text input, which is really interesting. Now, you probably wouldn't want to use a text field for a date input. You would probably want to actually use the date field that's actually already built into SwiftUI to do this, but it's just cool to know that it is humanly possible to do that. If you want to dive deeper into formatting the different pieces of something like a currency or a number formatter, I've got videos on that, and I'll link those in the description below. And feel free to check those out whenever you get a chance. For now, though, let's go ahead and put this back to our empty string, and let's change this back to a text, and we will get rid of our format since we don't need that for this particular initializer. Cool. And then there are other things that we can do to help the user know what type of data is supposed to be entered into this field. For example, one of those things that we could do is a keyboard type modifier. So we could say that this is a keyboard type and we want the user's email address. Now, there are two sides to being able to use this. If you know the user is running this on a phone, then this keyboard type can help with auto input, but as you can see here in the simulator, it's connected to my hardware keyboard, and so it's not going to give you that nice autocomplete or give you a specific keyboard type because it's connected to a hardware keyboard. So anything where you may be running on like a Mac OS or an iPad OS, or anything where you would have some sort of hardware keyboard connected to your device, this probably won't help you very much. You can also now there's another thing that you can do here, another modifier, and it is called a text content type. And for that, you can do very similar things that you can to keyboard type, but again, this will help your autofill information be able to know what kind of data goes here. So same thing, you can just pass in the text content type and tell it that, for example, this could be an email address, and then it should help you autocomplete or autofill these values with the right pieces of information. Now, say for example, you don't want anyone to be able to see the content that you're writing into this field. For example, you don't want anyone to just be able to see the characters in a password field by default. So one way you can do that is we could change this text content type to something like a password, and instead of using a text field, we could use a secure field, and that secure field takes the same initializers that our text field does. But now, whenever we come over here and attempt to start typing, we can see that whenever we type letters or numbers into this field, it is helping, it is hiding those characters so that no one will be able to look over your shoulder and see the password. Now, as far as modifiers go, let's go ahead and let's change this back to our regular text field for now. And we will take the content type off. So as far as modifiers go, you can actually do some pretty cool stuff with a text field. So as you can see here, by default, our text field doesn't have any kind of borders. It's a little hard to tell where things are in the view. And that can be fixed in various different ways, but one way you can do it is to add a text field style. And you can say, instead of plain, which is what or automatic, you can say dot rounded border. And as you can see here, you get a nice outline of a rounded border on your text field, which is pretty cool. Now you can also, this is probably one of the more simple things that you can do to just add a border very quickly, but you can go all the way to the other extreme. For example, let's add some padding, and let's add a background, And inside our background, we want, let's say, a radial gradient. That sounds fun. And let's pass in dot red, dot green, dot blue, and let's make the center start at the center, and we'll make the start at 0, and we'll give it a radius of 200. There we go. There's you some bright colors on your text field. And then we will make the foreground style dot white, and let's put some text inside of here. Learning SwiftUI text fields. Cool. All right. And now let's give it a little more padding on the outside just so we can see what that looks like. And you can see it's got some squared off corners. So let's give this a clip shape of a rounded rectangle. And let's give it a corner radius of 7, for example. Cool. So as you can see, you can go all the way from making your text field as basic and user-friendly as you would like, all the way up to as crazy and customized as you could possibly imagine. Now, if you got value from this video, feel free to like, share, and subscribe. And if you leave a comment, just be nice about it. That's all I ask. Thanks. Have a great day.